So before we actually get into today's video, I just want to take the opportunity to talk to you guys about the OneFootball app, because it is the perfect hub for this year's World Cup. Whether you want team news, player statistics, lineups, live tickers, live updates throughout the game, post-match reports, man of the match reports, OneFootball has you covered. It really does have everything that you need to stay up to date at this tournament, and it is the best way to stay in the know. It will also give you the league tables, the group standings, and of course the upcoming fixtures, which is really important to make sure that you don't miss the biggest games, because there's some crazy results going on, you don't want to miss them. So make sure to use the OneFootball app and download it using the link in the description down below. Hey guys, welcome back to the AJ Analysis channel, where today we are talking about Brazil's 2-0 win over Serbia. Now, for me personally, with Neymar being my second favourite player in history, the Brazilian football culture, the Brazilian football history, and the fact that I just love so many of these Brazilian players, for me the World Cup doesn't start until Brazil have played. Now, for that reason, that's why I want to talk about this game. Do I necessarily think it was the most entertaining game? No. It wasn't really trademarked Brazil. Tactically, it wasn't the most intricate game we'll ever see, but it's Brazil at a World Cup, so I just feel like we've got to talk about it. And also, just quickly before we go into it, we have now seen every team play at least once. So, get in the comments down below and let me know who you think has been the most dangerous team so far. The top four, not in order, have got to be Brazil, England, Spain and France. They probably look the best teams at the moment. But let's talk about Brazil and the way that they set up and the way that they tried to break this Serbia team down. Now, going into this game, I was really looking forward to it because I thought Serbia could put up a bit of a fight, but they just had some fitness issues that I weren't aware of. Vlahovic not fully fit, Mitrovic, who started, not fully fit, Kostic not fit and actually didn't feature in the game at all. That made it very difficult for Serbia. I think as the tournament goes on and those players gain fitness and sharpness, we will see Serbia play much more front-footed, possession-based attacking football. And I think they can be quite exciting at this tournament still. This was by far their hardest game in the group, and with those fitness concerns, they made it quite clear very early on, we're just going to sit behind the ball and we're going to try and hit you on the break, but you guys are going to have the ball, Brazil. Can you break us down? And this meant that Serbia very much sat off in a 5-3-2. But I think the Brazil manager, Tite, was very front-footed with the way that he set his team up. And we can even see that from the personnel. To have Lucas Paqueta alongside Casemiro in a double pivot, immediately that's quite an attacking decision to make. But basically, with Serbia sitting so deep, Brazil progressed the ball really easily through this first defensive third. There was no real case of having to play through a press, things like that. Of course, it did occasionally happen, but it weren't a big feature of this game. Instead, it was Brazil dominating in what was a 2-3 shape, with Thiago Silva and Marquinhos getting plenty of touches of the ball, Casemiro just in front of them, and then Sandro and Danilo, sometimes inverted, sometimes wider. And also at times, Paqueta could drop deeper. He could form a double pivot to get the ball and then try and progress the play from there. But there were also plenty of occasions where he was given the freedom to push further forward, particularly as the game went on and Brazil were chasing the goal. They needed a goal. They started pushing men further forward. Whilst all of this was going on, the wingers were very much holding the width, both Rafinha and Vinicius Jr. Richarlison was the main man up front. And then, like I said, we had Neymar and Paqueta roaming about in these pockets of space. Before we continue with the analysis, I want to talk to you guys about JerseyFIFA.com, the home of all of the greatest football kits. Whether that's the latest home shirts, the latest away shirts, tracksuits, or even retro kits, Jersey FIFA has a bit of everything. There really is something for everyone, so if you are interested, then make sure to use the link in the description down below and head to JerseyFIFA.com. Now, the first thing I want to say on that is, immediately, the fact that I can do this, kind of put this shape out for you, is a good sign. Now, people will say Brazil weren't that special, and I do agree, and there were people after the game saying they look quite beatable, things like that. I think it's important to remember this was their first game. Every team struggles in their first game. The first game is one of the hardest games of a tournament, just because you're kind of getting into your groove, especially after such a quick turnaround after domestic football's been played. But also, Serbia are just a very, very good team. But I think the fact that we can point out a clear Brazilian structure is a good start, because I wouldn't say you could do the same for Argentina in their game against Saudi Arabia. Their structure was very peculiar. Uruguay played yesterday. Their system was odd. Portugal, they had a good structure eventually, but initially the structure was poor and unbalanced. And who's the other team? There's another team who had a poor structure, but I can't think who it was. It doesn't matter. You get the idea. There's been a few good teams. Belgium. It was Belgium. Didn't have a clear structure of how they wanted to play. Brazil, we could see what they wanted to do. There was this 2-3-4-1 or a 2-3-5 shape, which could also become a 2-4-4 like this. So I think, like I said, that's the first good thing to point out, that they could do that. We can point out a clear Brazilian structure, so that is a good sign for them moving forward. In terms of actually in this particular game, it was made really difficult by them, because we can see, made really difficult for them, sorry. Because if we look at this Serbian shape, look how many players they have in central areas. We've got the two strikers who are both doing a really good defensive shift, particularly Tadic on this right-hand side, dropping in here. We then got the three in midfield, again, who worked very, very hard off the ball, and then a flat back five. But in central areas in particular, two strikers, three central midfielders, three centre-backs. That is 8 players just crowding the middle. You've got your wing-backs out wide, but just crowding the centre. And I think the mistake that Brazil made in the first half in particular was that they tried to play through that a bit too much. I completely understand why. And I dare say that would have been one of Tite's instructions before the game. It's something that I talk about a lot. Vertical and central progression is very important, absolutely. However, there does come a time when you've got to realise maybe we can't do it in this game. Because there are just so many players in this area. There are even times when Tadic should drop in like this, and it becomes more of a diamond in the midfield, which is always difficult to play against just because of the pure volume of players. But then when you've also got someone like Milinkovic being very aggressive from right centre-back, stepping out, the same with Lukic on this right-hand side, it made it really difficult for Brazil to play in the way that they like. Now, we know that Neymar wants to get into these pockets, drop deep, get the ball, get on the turn. There were times he was able to do that. But like I said, Milinkovic was very aggressive with the way that he defended, being very front-footed, and Lukic was always there or thereabouts trying to get a foot in, as was Dusan Tadic tracking back down this side. And Brazil have a good amount of talent on both sides of the pitch. Rafinha is a very good right winger, but we know that more of the focus is down the left. Of course it is when you've got Neymar and Vinicius. But the problem was Serbia were very aware of that as well, which meant that they could kind of switch over to one side, get men over to this side of the pitch, and just look how crowded that is. Even when Sandro is coming forward, that's very crowded. Now, do I think Neymar had his best game? No. But it's very difficult to when you have constantly 3 players around you. But what Serbia done really well was they could get 3 players around Ronaldo like this. Because they had so many central players, it didn't break their structure. They could commit to going 2 or 3 men around Neymar and still have 1v1s around most other areas of the pitch. Especially with the fact that the Brazilian fullbacks weren't exactly bombing forward like crazy. We saw some underlapping runs, but they weren't like really adventurous, really pushing forward. So Serbia deserve so much credit for this performance. Yes, people will say Brazil were a little bit flat for 60 minutes. I just think Serbia were genuinely that good defensively. Brazil weren't helped by the fact that Rafinha on the right-hand side had a really poor game. So there were situations where Brazil would do this, build down the left, kind of suck Serbia over to one side, look to switch the ball to Rafinha, which is the right thing to do when trying to play against a low block. There were spells where Rafinha just wasn't great with his first touch, his dribbling wasn't great, he'd kind of overrun the ball out for a goal kick. So that didn't help Brazil, the fact that kind of individually they had a player not playing at his best. That certainly didn't make things any easier for them. But just in general, I don't think Brazil were bad or slow or anything like that. Or maybe a little bit, occasionally 1 or 2 too many touches from someone like Neymar. But in general, I just think Serbia were incredible defensively. Their team defence was absolutely brilliant. The problem was they didn't have much going the other way. And they would win the ball back in these areas, try and go along to Mitrovic. Casemiro was just an absolute man mountain, as he always is. The best holding midfielder in football at the moment. Fabinho doesn't even get a sniff in this side. Casemiro is just a better footballer, and he has been, particularly in the last 12 months or so. Casemiro just does a brilliant job constantly getting this ball here, recycling it, and then also on the ball. At the moment, there aren't many midfielders that pass the ball forward better than Casemiro. I mentioned Casemiro a lot on the channel because of covering so many United games. His passing is very, very, very good, and honestly, he might have been my man of the match from this game. He was certainly up there. Certainly while it's still 0-0, he really was playing very, very well, and providing Brazil with that base to then move further forward. But like I said, Serbia done a very good job. However, Tite did change something at half-time slightly. And you might question me saying that, because if you look back at the game, at half-time there were no substitutions. Not from this point of view anyway. And the thing that he changed was actually he just kind of went, okay, let's stop trying to go through the middle. Let's get the ball out wide to this man, Vinicius Jr. He had a decent amount of touches in the first half. Second half it was much more. And what you've got to remember is Vinicius is a player that comes under a lot of criticism, gets a lot of scrutiny from fans and things like that. This was his World Cup debut, and he played with this confidence and this flair at such a young age. Unbelievably good player. There's a lot of talk about Neymar in his team, and rightly so there should be. He's the star. Vinicius is not far behind at the moment. He's just absolutely incredible, and that was really the difference maker for Brazil in the second half. They started feeding Vinicius more. And unfortunately for Zivkovic, because of Neymar being there and his gravity drawing several players like Lukic, Milinkovic, it meant that Vinicius could get 1v1 against Zivkovic, and Vinicius Jr. 1 versus 1 is not something I want to try and deal with personally. He is ridiculously good. The speed of his feet work, his brain work, his ability to cover ground, incredibly quick. His acceleration is off the charts. That's a long day playing against that. No thank you. Not for me personally. The other issue, or the other thing that changed actually, was a forced change. And this, I think, had a big impact on the game. Gudelj got a booking on about the 49th minute. A silly booking. He didn't need to get that booking, which then meant around the 57th minute he was brought off. And bringing off your holding midfielder, who was playing very well and an important part of your team defence, it just seemed to disrupt them defensively a little bit. They just seemed to take a little bit of time to kind of adjust to what they were now meant to be doing. Combine that with the fact that these Serbian players were clearly fatiguing. And Brazil deserve credit for that, because they kept moving the ball, they kept being patient, moving the ball side to side, dragging the Serbian defence about. It made the Serbian defence, they fatigued, they really did, and against Brazil you just can't fatigue. Because players like Vinicius can provide a moment of quality, skip past their man, put a ball into the box. Neymar can do it. And then Richarlison, up top, can come up with a moment of magic like that, apparently. Now, he hasn't been particularly good for Spurs this season, but in 2022, his form for Brazil has been absolutely brilliant. And I think it showed the importance of having a box presence. Now, a lot of people wanted Gabriel Jesus to play this game. When Jesus plays, he is a player that wants to kind of drift into these areas, get the ball into feet, maybe wriggle through players, which he is very good at doing, and there's a case to be made that could have been useful to try and break down his low block. However, what Richarlison done was just stayed in that area where you get the goals. He wasn't too bothered about dropping deep and getting involved in the link play. He was a box presence, and that's exactly what Brazil needed, because that's where both of his goals came from. Sniffing in those areas, one is a tap-in, which shows that poacher instinct, and the second is just a very, very good goal. But I'm not even sure that Gabriel Jesus would have been in that position. So Richarlison deserves a lot of credit, as does Tite for going with Richarlison. Personally, I probably wouldn't have done it myself. But he was proven right. Richarlison had a brilliant game up front. Probably the one concern for Brazil moving forward is this injury to Neymar. And can't help but feel sorry for him. I really, really hope this isn't the end of his tournament. Tite has said it won't be. Tite has said he will play again. Not so sure. It doesn't look good. That ankle does look very swollen. This is why he needs protection. And what I see a lot of people, especially in England, a lot of people comment on Neymar and they go to his diving and play acting, things like that. I do not blame him for diving. If you see the way that he is tackled, at times he has to dive to get players booked, because if not, people just keep kicking him. When he went off the pitch, Brazil had been fouled 12 times. 9 of those were on Neymar. It's blatant targeting. Now, I don't blame Serbia for doing it, because if you can get away with it, of course target the best player for the opposition. But the referees have got to protect a player like Neymar more, because he's such a wonderful talent. He is a generational talent. There isn't another player like him in the world at the moment. We've got to protect him a bit more. We've got to let him do what he wants to do on the ball. And yeah, it's just so disappointing. I hope his tournament isn't over. If it is, that will be a blow for Brazil, but we know they have plenty of depth. Someone like Paqueta can move further forward into that 10 position. Perhaps Fred could come into the team deeper with Casemiro or Bruno Guimaraes. Who knows? We'll have to see what the situation is with Neymar. But in general, in terms of Brazil, I think the tournament has finally started now. Every team has played, including Brazil. It doesn't start till Brazil play. And I think they looked pretty impressive. People will say they weren't great, but this is a very good Serbia team that will cause some top side some problems if they get through the group. So Brazil deserve a lot of credit, because they made Serbia look pretty ordinary. This guy is the man, though. Yes, Richarlison got the 2 goals. This guy is something different. Absolutely electric. And with him in the team, and if Neymar can stay fit, Brazil can go all the way. They've got off to a good start in the group. Probably their hardest game they will face in the group. They've won 2-0. You can't ask for more than that. So that's my thoughts on the video. That's all I have to say. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you have enjoyed the video. And as always, I will see you in the next one.